what you hear. Proclaim nationality, have no fear. Hear what they want to, share when they taunt you. In a dead state of mind is where they want you. Watch what I say, heed what you hear. Proclaim nationality, have no fear. Hear what they want to, share when they taunt you. In a dead state of mind is where they want you. They pack up sniper rifles and guitar cases. Moorish nationality leaves Vicar stateless. Keep the property, cancel leases and land grants. For every Moor hung scimitar to clan hands. To let it be Ashe is what this man chants. Conscious coons won't bite hands that give them scam grants. Dirty Moors, I see them from miles away. Call them out with black hair until mine are gray. No need to debate them, to deflate them, just make them keep mouth shut, feed them scimitar butts. Let them send their minions and foot soldier pawns. My blade they evade like vamps at dawn. Watch them turn to bats while I'm pulling fangs with pliers. Give respect to doers, and I can't stand triers. Can't stand dirty Moor fucked on liars and frauds. Treasonous conspirators wild like boars. Oh dirty bastard, dirt McGirt Moors. Got death and sulfur scents leaking from your pores. Watch what I say, heed what you hear. Proclaim nationality, have no fear. Hear what they want to, share when they want.
Mason comes from another son. You see? But we get spooked out because we think this club is Mason and Illuminati, the light bearers don't know who they're really talking about. Yeah. And they're really talking about us, but we don't want to be ourselves because we want to be black. Black is an adjective. How can people be adjectives? Right? Or, or black is death, scientific. So they're looking at us, the touchless beings of the planet.
They're looking at us as dead. They treat us as like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we don't stick together. Because
don't use that word anymore. We are.
I know.
Yeah.
Believe me, I know.
We're sending out that energy.
Yeah,
we have to stick together, okay?
Yes.
Like even though I have a tough life for the last couple of months, like my friends find out what I do, they all think I'm crazy, they walk out on my life. Like my best friend just walked out just a couple days ago.
You don't have to, listen,
she's saying you're doing crazy things. What do you think? You have to challenge in government. Challenge to the court. She said, I'm not part of your game. I don't want to be in jail. I don't want to bail you out. She said, I'm no longer in your life. I was crying. I said, okay, fine. I still want to standing up.
Yes. Because you can't go backwards now.
Yeah.
This is no matter how much you love your children, your wife, your husband, whatever. Once you find out, what are you going to do? They can say you're crazy. I've been through this already, what you're talking about, I know.
Yeah.
Then after 10 years, they're gone. You're crazy. What are you talking about? But then what happened is, I found Moorish knowledge. Because I felt this already. But then I got the facts. Then I started getting facts. What words mean, the facts. What things are, what the real science and facts are. And then that's when it gave me, oh well, see you later. If you want to think I'm crazy, and you don't want to do your homework and research and see what facts are, see you later, because now I think you're crazy. I'm
not crazy, but they just chose to wake up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Because then it's slowing down because I love myself. I'm not just doing this because it's some kind of thing. This is for everybody. And we're all connected. Once I found out what I found out, don't know these guys. I could be driving and I see those are gods and they don't know they're gods because they're looking for a mystery god up in the sky. You know there's not there.
Yeah.
And then once I found this out and then keep finding things out, like you're talking about, and keep finding things out, I can't go backwards now. No matter how much I love somebody. I could love them to death. Yeah. But I cannot stop now.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless we do it together, and we can win. And I haven't heard a woman, there's women that I see on the internet that talk like you, but in person, I haven't really seen any women really shake it up. Do you know what I mean? Like really mean it. I see women come here and they listen and like ask questions and stuff like that. But they're still docile, like they're still better. I don't know what I'm getting into. Right?
I won't part of the kind of crazy. But you're ready. No, I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
but I chose to. That's my journey. It's my free will.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what God give us the free will to come here to do what we
Yes.
think to do, right?
Yes.
So I chose to wake up and I chose to make a difference.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah,
He
that's
told
what
me,
it is.
He
Yeah.
told me today, he said that a lady called you
Yeah.
and he was telling this to me. And I was saying good, because you hear so much, right?
Yeah.
But now I meet you and I know this is real energy. Just,
Yeah, it's the
you
real
got more
deal.
energy than some of the guys.
Yeah.
It's,
So,
it's really amazing. There's a few faithful Moors. Yes.
well, I haven't used the information you sent me to doing it though. Okay, so what I did is, okay, I did it a little differently in court. Okay,
Yes.
I did it when I went to the court 2 weeks ago when I first spoke to you.
Yeah.
I can print out the information and
Yeah,
all that you
yeah.
send me. I use the information as the guy who I talked to in England.
Right.
His name is John Anthony Hill, and he won the court case about the queen is not a legitimate queen.
Really? Yes. The
Okay.
facts.
No, it's fact.
No,
yeah.
I know this
yeah.
is facts.
Yeah, so he presented the whole case, and he won the case.
Yes.
And so the queen is fraudulent because he kissing the stone is not the real stone,
Yes.
according to tradition, according to the God law
Yes.
and all that. So he have all kind of document proof that that's the
Yes.
fact.
Yes.
And then also another fact is the queen, when he swear in the King James Bible, according to her swear,
Yes.
in that is saying she do her utmost best way to preserve God law,
Yes,
not
yes.
man-made law.
Yes,
She
yes.
would not produce a man-made law. But as she being in the queen, the last how many years, 50 some years, she just letting all the people create all the law, man-made law, common law, and all that.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's violation of God law.
Yes.
So that's something.
In violation of.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So that's why you need to indict her,
Yes.
right? So anyhow, so the bottom line is, so he pointed out that 2 things. So the another major thing is going to the God law, the King James Bible. Every 7 years, have to feed dead people.
Really?
Meaning it's like when you have a dead, have to forgive it.
Yes.
Every 7 years. I can send you the paper. to
Yes,
read it.
yes.
Okay. So it's in his case. He's showing that in his case to presenting the truth, the fact.
So every 7 years they have to believe the dead.
Yeah. Like all the dead.
Just when
the
the
planet, the quietly.
Yes.
She did not do so.
Right.
So, and God said if you didn't do it in every 7 year, the bottom line is every 50 year jubilee, you have to, you must, or else you just violating my law. You are no longer my child. That kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
So that's what's in the King James Bible, the true Bible, not the other Bible. Okay. So he presented all of those things, the fact, and went to trial for 3 days. And this guy ended up in jail for 150 something.
Oh, they threw him in
Yeah,
so-called kidnapped him for 3 yeah.
No, not beside that. Google him up, John
Yes.
Anthony Hill. But I send you the link. Okay. This guy, what he did is originally he did a documentary. The documentary is called 77 Ripple Effect. It talk about the people who created five guy who did the bombing of England bus, like in 2007,
Okay, I
something
know,
like
I
that.
know about, okay.
Like some bombing in the
Yeah,
past, kill
okay.
a lot of people. So
Oh,
they
yes, yes.
they accuse a 5 innocent boy, a Muslim man.
Yeah.
Yes.
They say they're the one did it.
They're
Yeah.
the terrorists,
Yeah, but this John Anthony went out his way to prove that those guys did not created this criminal. It's the government behind it.
Oh yes, everything that happens.
And the 9/11 and all those things.
Even with Syria right now with the gas.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the U.S. government.
Yes.
I have no doubt about that.
Yes.
But anyhow,
Yeah.
so the thing was, so this John Anthony proved that, but the government say he created a conspiracy to try to overthrow the government and all that. So they put him in jail.
Right.
So that's what at the beginning.
Yes.
They put him in jail. They say he's the bad guy.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So while he's in jail, they will not let him have a bill of himself out, all kind of thing. So they just want to kill him there, right?
Yes.
But he just end up studying the Bible, studying the King James Bible. So that's why he understood inside out about what's the truth.
Yes.
So he used the Bible to overthrow the queen.
Yes.
And he said, your queen have no jurisdiction on me, and your government have no jurisdiction over me, because you are not real queen, and you swear the oath, you broke your own oath, and all the judge, the lawyer, and everybody swear
allegiance
under
to the queen.
Yeah, so take the authority from the queen.
Yeah.
So when the queen is a fake, it's a fraudulent.
Everything
so
else.
The judge and everybody is
everybody
fraudulent.
else is fraudulent, right?
So that's his argument, right?
Yeah.
So he have a whole bunch, supported document and fact and all kind of thing.
It's all de facto.
Yeah.
But see, he can only make that argument because he's European.
Yeah.
But other person can't make that argument
So that's why
because we're not Christian.
And then you can put underneath there like Pope Francis.
Islam, we're waiting on y'all whenever you're ready.
Yeah, the floor is yours, Mark. Go ahead.
Making it clear that we, Moors on the Round Table, Moor Science Temple of America, etc., are addressing this issue for the clarification of the people, just between here.
Islam Moors, we just revamping today's lesson and multiple lessons for years. So we were just addressing the class action suit back that we did in 2005. I'm just trying to get everybody abreast on it because we read on the internet last night that they still were trying to counteract a case we did 8 years ago. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back over that case and we're going to revamp that case, and at the same time we're going to revise the case and teach Moors in the process as we do it. Because what's occurring is we forgot all about the case. And what I mean by that is we have not been really looking at the case because we got the remedy, immediate remedy that we were looking for, but we kind of like went on to something else because there's so much work to do. So we read last night that they were still trying to counteract us and put on these government forums, myself and Brother Taj's name, relative to us being anti-government.
Saying falsely claiming.
Well, yeah, alleging that we were anti-government and we were basically against the Prophet and the Moor Science Temple and that we were offshoots of the Moorish movement. So what we did with today is when we did the lecture at the temple, we reiterated the importance that Moors have to study this information and be adept. Just being Moorish American or just having a nationality card is not good enough because we're day by day, we're dealing with a conflict that can't be told in words, and we really got to demonstrate this in public and in private to try to raise the consciousness of the people and form the plebiscite so we can address this collectively. Because although it mentioned myself and Taj's name, immediately because our name is on it, we have to do something about it. But this is something that we all have to do about it collectively, and we're not in a position to counter-react it. We need other Moors who are qualified and who are educated to carry on that same fight for us. That way nobody can be singled out as this guy or that guy, or this leader or that leader. We're all leaders. And if we all have equality, diplomacy, knowledge, then it's hard for them to single one person out. So that's what we're up against now, trying to bring everybody up to speed and get everybody proactive, have everybody addressing the media, have everybody addressing the social networks, and challenging things before it even hit the fan. And that way, it makes their job harder to target.
Quick question. One, could you just give a brief background about the case that you're relating to? And secondly, could you speak about the connection between the case that you're dealing with and all the other cases that Moors are dealing with that, you know, they don't put together because we think that everything's separate?
Meaning that this is what it is. What the very nature of the case establishes what is universally known as a federal question. And as you already know, whenever there's an issue of treaty violation and constitution violation, you're speaking of Constitution and treaty as one document. At that point, when there's an abridgment of an existing right or secured right by the people, automatically it's referred to as a federal question. What they're trying to do strategically is slander myself and Grand Chief Nature as if our argument is invalid and that we're anti-government when we're actually enforcing the law that government officials are bound and obligated to support and to enforce. And in fact, it is necessary to make the distinction between the United States Republic, which was in place when Noble Ali set the divine constitution and bylaws in order, and it must be distinguished from the creation of the democracy order entity created by subversives that were infiltrated into the government and infiltrated into the Moorish Science Temple of America, known as COINTELPRO member, that is referred to as the Demo system of the Jesuit order, better known as the U.S. democracy, that was established on March the 9th, 1933, and was dealt with as public law June the 5th, 1933. In June, 4 years, almost to the day when Drew Ali bailed his forms 4 years prior, in June of 1929. And with COINTELPRO operatives that have infiltrated the Moorish Science Temple and have taken on the titles of grand governors, who have been meeting with these Europeans, castigating myself and Grand Chief Nature, pretending that we are not worthy of our positions and not worthy of the Moorish movement. We've taken people to the Divine Constitution and Bylaws, Act 4, and demonstrating that the government that we are part and parcel to, referenced by Noble Ali, is a republic, distinguished from that democracy form which they set up 4 years after he bailed his form, and are deceiving Moors into thinking that they're part of that demo government, which is a fraud. And when we speak against the fraud, they're implying that we're speaking against government in fact, which is a false representation. And therefore, in accord with our law, that those grand governors of the Moorish Science Temple of America should be speaking up in defense of the divine prophet and the Moorish movement and coming to our defense, but instead they've been meeting with them and in agreement with them, implying that we ourselves are making up things that are not lawful. And therefore, it is necessary for us to make sure that these people have a conscious knowledge of both the apostolic letter issued by the Pope of montu, Proprio, and tie it in to them actually trying to take the high road because these things are falling apart. And for them to really have a proper concept, we have the subdivisional syllabus dealing with silent weapons, Executive Order 11490, an issue by Noble Ali, religious controversy, the 7 Hermetic Principles, Moors Divine National Movement, Congressional Records, Senate, House Joint Resolution 192, Moorish Science Temple of America, and Moorish Holy Temple Science Constitution Bylaws, and the additional laws, Constitution for the United States of North American Republic, Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Treaty of Verona, and logically warning citizens beware, etc.
And also going back to the Moorish Science Temple of America, the Moors Divine and National Movement. The heart and the key of it, as you already know, is to bring the people back into the constitutional fold of government. When we speak about nationality and birthright, that automatically brings on the federal question. And for those who's taking notes, we want to be clear what a federal question is. A federal question means any controversy that brings on the interpretation of the Constitution automatically calls on a competent tribunal, Supreme Court, Congress, i.e. it's a constitutional issue at that point. That's what is a federal question. Just to be clear, a federal question. Whenever you hear that term, look it up in the Black's Law Dictionary. Controversy that brings on the interpretation of the Constitution. So when you mention the word nationality, that automatically constitutes a federal question, because to interpret the word nationality, the Constitution has to do that. You can't do that with state statutes, you can't do that with codes. And you definitely can't do that with slave codes. The slaves don't have nationality. So the whole nature of the movement constitutes a federal question. So anybody that's saying that they're Moorish American automatically should be talking the language of the Constitution, because that is a federal question. And whenever you talk that language in a tribunal or a courtroom, then that means that the ones hearing the case have to use the Constitution to interpret that particular case.
And they must be competent.
That's how we eliminate the jurisdiction of the lower courts, or what the Constitution calls inferior courts.
Or frauds.
An inferior court that does not deal with the Constitution is a kangaroo court or a colorable court. Therefore, does not constitute any legitimate courtroom here in the United States.
It has no jurisdiction.
That's why they tell you that they don't deal with the Constitution in that court. They're not lying to you. They can't deal with it.
Because they're not constitutional courts.
Article 3, Section 2. They do not have the authority granted to them to be an inferior jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Therefore, they have no power or authority to even hear a matter dealing with nationality. As soon as you say nationality, they're supposed to say wrong venue. We're removing this to another venue, or we're dismissing it because we don't have the jurisdiction to deal with it. It shouldn't be anything else discussed. And our problem with Moors is we keep discussing the subject matter and going around the federal question. If the court is not competent to hear the matter, automatically we should address that and remove it, or ask for it to be dismissed.
All right, so question. We have individual here, a sister from Manchuria who just came into the fold. Well, not just, but she's been studying from the freedmen, and then now she's coming into the Moorish perspective. So she went to court, and with regard to a foreclosure, and the judge asked her, well, what do you want me to do? I have no jurisdiction. When she started asking the questions, the pertinent questions.
Now look at this. Now that's where it comes where she's supposed to know law, you see? Because as soon as the judge asked her, what does she want him to do? What he was telling her, I'm acting right now as the FOFR or trustee, as the true beneficiary and heir of the estate. Tell me what you want. She was supposed to say, what I want you to do, close and settle the matter, you understand? Do the set off and clear everything down to zero. And as a matter of fact, give me a few hundred for my time that I spent in here.
Islam.
Yes, Islam.
Thank you.
Continue on,
Islam and Grand Sheikh, on the other note with that is, even if it was another type of issue as far as traffic, all right, that's a key when a magistrate, because he's not a judge, because I'm assuming that it was in the lower court.
Right.
But no matter what they call themselves, judge or magistrate, you treat them the same. He's a magistrate, and he's the payroll, he's neutral. So that's a key. Whenever he says that, what he's doing is turning the court over to you at that time. So what it's just like a ball game. You got advantage, you got the ball in your court.
Say what you want.
So when he says that what you want me to do, that's when you says I'm asking or demanding a reversal of the charges, and I, for the public record, close this case. on the grounds of lack of jurisdiction or lack of prosecution or whatever the issue is.
Or misrepresentation of the deed pledge.
But Moors don't close the cases. That's what keeps them being adjourned to another time. You must close the case. So what you got to do is say, for the record, I am reversing the charges, and I do state for the public record that this case is closed. For the record. Remember, if it's not for the record, they're going to adjourn it to another time. And regardless of what he says, if he tells you you're free to leave or whatever, you make sure you go to the court clerk and ask for a deposition. And the deposition should state that the case is closed. That way they can't bring it back up in 2 months, 3 months, or 6 months.
Wow.
But we have to close the case, and that's what he means by what do you want me to do.
Thank you for answering the question.
It's fine, sis.
Hi. Right now, the court do say foreclosure my house, and I am appealing the case. I have a 20-day, and they told me, according to the court procedure, they told me to go to divisional court to appeal the case.
All right, now 2 things we're going to do. You're going to write a writ of error. Writ of error.
Okay.
That's number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, you're going to take that same judge and you're going to tell him that you're appointing him as trustee. Since he spoke on the case as agent and spoke on the matter for another agent, which was a violation, but you'll forgive that. Because the prosecutor was supposed to talk trash. And that is an error because it is private property that has been falsely listed as industrially misclassified. As a matter of fact, you've been paying taxes on it on a misclassification. And this is a state property, estate. Remember, George Washington and the crew took our estate, took the E off, and made it the states, and assigned themselves as trustees. So you assign him as trustee, tell him to set off the claim, and that the banks or whoever makes such a claim cannot own property because they can only act as middlemen, and they have under false pretenses trying to claim the escrow and trying to claim your private property when the only thing that the bank owns is the position of FOFR or trustee that they created, which is referred to as a deed of trust. And then they falsely claim that you abandon your property, and thus that would be written on the documents talking about foreclosure. However, say you did not abandon your estate, never intended to abandon your estate, and in fact claimed your estate under trust. So you put your estate under trust, put a bond on it, etc., and tell them that they want to continue, that they must compensate you, and you didn't agree to abandon anyway. But if they want it, they'll give it to you. You'll give it to them for $10 million for starters.
Okay. So you mean I need to create a trust? Now I need to create a trust?
Put your house in trust. And remember, listen to this. If you check the papers, and one thing you're going to talk on the writ of error, because whoever the banks or the mortgage company are, they listed you as a tenant, which is a misrepresentation because you weren't renting, you were buying. And they dealt with you on that premise. And therefore, a non-disclosed agreement is a deliberate fraud and an inducement and a misrepresentation. So any claims that they have in the property or on the property are void on its face because non-disclosure. Therefore, they have no interest in the party. They have no party of interest. Furthermore, you're going to show some of the instruments that they had sent you and demonstrate that they made issues to you through the United States mail with instruments that have no signature on it. And then they have other instruments that they sent to you that have robo-signatures on it, which is improper service, which is a misrepresentation, and furthermore, representatives of trustees that were assigned by the bank without them notifying you, which is a breach of honor in the estate. And therefore, on that breach, their claim is to be dismissed, and you're left with your house that they claim that you abandoned, which you did not. Are we clear?
Yes, sir.
So you're going to tell the judge I assigned you as trustee. What I want you to do is discharge and set off that already prepaid encumbrance, because it was paid with my signature.
Yes, I did say that, but how?
And yes, close the matter.
Yeah, however.
And send me back the report on the estate, all settled out, cleared, down to zero, and I'm recouping all claims to my estate.
Okay. Like,
Now you can do a little bit more research to understand what I just said to you, including I want you to look up that rally letter that I did in 2/11 in Philadelphia. It should be on the site of rbbaypublications.com. I'll make sure it's on the Moors and Temple's website too, because you need to study or know what your position is, and then you need to know that reconveyance letter, because that's what you're going to present to both the bankers and all other parties of interest, etc. Because what it demonstrates is that you have not abandoned your property, because the premise that they're operating on is that you've abandoned your estate. And by them having an interest in it, you burden them with it, and therefore they charge you with abandonment. Go down to the county records or to the province records and the minister's records, and you'll see that almost every mortgage foreclosure will be listed as an abandonment.
yes, sir.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you abandon your estate knowingly, willingly?
No, I was stay there, and they did it behind my back foreclosure. I
Well,
mean,
this is what I'm saying to you.
Yeah.
If you didn't abandon your estate, how can someone else speak for you and say that you abandoned your estate? And then the court move on that. That's a misrepresentation, isn't it?
Also, another
Yes.
question.
yes.
Who has power of attorney over your estate?
Myself.
Okay, did you hire an attorney?
No, I
In
went to the
matter-
court all by myself. I representing myself.
Then they have no interest in the
So
matter.
when you say all by yourself, legally, what is that called? How did you do it by yourself?
What that's supposed to
You
be?
said it earlier.
In Proprio persona,
That means that whenever you do something by yourself, in law, that's called impropria persona. And you have to put that on your documentation when you correspond to the court.
and on the record.
If you don't, they put it in as a pro se status.
They will change the status.
I
And
didn't-
pro se,
I
they
didn't-
still bring you under the slave code
Oh, okay, I do
as
not
a
understand
14th
this.
Amendment citizen when you're pro se.
It's not Mark. Just break
Yes.
down the Proprio persona a little bit more for
I do not
understanding.
understand that.
Now repeat that again, Gracie.
I do not understand what you say.
Hey, listen.
If you can
To
break
make
down.
it simple to you, let's make, cause you'll remedy this after after we get off the phone, after we get off the Skype. Cause this is, you're gonna have to have some knowledge, just like Noble Drawley says to the Moors. We are teaching our people to be themselves. In law, that status is referred to as in propria persona. That means in one's own proper person. And what you will discover is that any pleas or actions before a court must be pled in propria persona. Because if not, then the court automatically has jurisdiction, as all those agencies, including the lawyers, etc., are officers of the court. And they assume that jurisdiction and assume to have leave. So any other status that you enter an argument into the court outside of the appropriate persona, they already claim jurisdiction. Are we clear?
Yes, I know that.
So
That's
if
how
you're
I know.
standing for yourself in your right person, that status is in appropriate persona. Islamos, you understand?
Not completely
Well,
comprehend that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
When we get off the phone, You're going to have to look that up and get abreast. This is one of the reasons why we have the Moorish Science Temple of America, and why every temple must have a school. Because these subtleties of both status and citizenship must be taught to make our people better citizens and to prepare us to take our places amongst the affairs of men. And of course, when you have a nationality, automatically Article 3, Section 2 comes to play, which is called the consular issue, or what is known as diversity. And then they cannot litigate an action concerning you lawfully under a 14th Amendment venue, which is what they've been doing.
Islam, yeah. Everything you're not going to get in this one segment here, but, you know, give it to Grand Sheikh and the other members, and they will actually school you more in depth on what we're saying. But whenever you correspond with the courts, it's a certain procedure that you have to do to stay within that constitutional venue. And that's what we're saying in a nutshell. But once again, it's a step-by-step procedure as far as answering up in names and principles, starting with the name, meaning your free national name. All of these things have to be done first in order to have recourse at law, to have a constitutional response to it. You gotta answer up according to the Constitution. Soon as you play their game, that colorable due process is called, then you're already in the jurisdiction. And then they're gonna deal with it according to their discretion. That's how they deal with slaves.
Yes.
We're trying to stay in a free man status.
And so the issue is honor and dishonor.
Yes.
The lower courts are operating in a dishonorable venue, pretending you're being dishonorable.
Yes.
As a national, you always stay in honor. Therefore, our principles are to uphold the Constitution for the United States of America, which is based in ancient law, which Obama was saying when he went to Egypt. And therefore, it is our duty and our responsibility to enforce the Constitution. And when you say that, you're talking treaty/Constitution as one document. Logically, those who have been maintaining slavery in North America don't want this information out and don't want the concepts properly dispensed amongst the people. However, the Moorish Science Temple of America was established as an organization to bring remedy to that situation. It is the cure for the sin-sick world. Unfortunately, the refinement of the concepts have, for the most part, been held amongst the adepts and those who know, and has not been dispensed to the people or the membership in such a manner that they can comprehend it. Therefore, when issues of birthright come up, they had no defense mechanism and no remedy. And they would get frustrated because they would not understand what to do. You see? So therefore, Nodrali set this order up in such a manner that the people are to be brought back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution of the United States of America. And that being founded in Muslim law, it is dealing in moral principles. And they have an oath and a bond to uphold it. This is why sometimes you'll say to the judge, I hold you and I accept your bond and your oath conjoined and proceed from that point. That's why you want their oath and bond. But what they're doing, they're actually enforcing private law, lying to the people, telling them that it is the public law, and they're lying.
Yes.
In other words, they're racketeering.
When I went to the court, the first thing I asked him, I said, before proceed, may I have your oath and your bond? But he said,
yes, can I ask this to you?
Yeah, but he
remember, and this is for everybody.
Yeah.
Everything that you're going to ask that court, nothing verbally, it should be put in written form. Is it in writing?
No.
No, mistake.
Yeah.
You made a mistake. We're correcting you.
Okay, so I need to put it in writing.
If you make arguments verbal, they're going to cover it up.
Okay.
You put it in writing, and you put the case number on it, and make it an evidence so that they can't dismiss it.
Okay. Well, I asked him 3 times. So that's what I learned. And say ask her 3 times. If he deny it, it's gonna be in the record. I stated that. I say as in the record for the record. I asked her 3 times. He denied my human right, and he did not give me that. So
Yes, but keep in mind. Yes, go ahead.
Before you go ahead, speak to her with regard to the connection that she has to the Moors, because her studies come from the European side, the Freeman side.
Can you all lower, can you lower a little bit? Because yeah. Islam, repeat that, please.
Her studies with regard to the perspective of law are coming from the European sovereignty movement.
All right, let's say this. Now, this is what you must keep in mind, and I'll read this to you so that your concepts are corrected.
okay.
And this includes everybody.
Okay.
Remember that the subversives and the racketeers that infiltrated the government in North America set up a private criminal order of imposters pretending to be government. And they set up a court system for the barristers of England to counter the Republic, which is the legitimate government. Are you clear on what I just said?
A little bit.
That was done, initiated by Woodrow Wilson in 1913, and it was solidified by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933 with the Trading with the Enemies Act, the Gold Act, and House Joint Resolution 192, whereas they created the democracy order, and this was an organization set up by criminal operatives in the United States government, whose purpose and mission it is to overthrow the Republic, which Noble Drawley told us to support. This was set up 4 years after Noble Drawley passed his form. And that is called the U.S. democracy that you will see in the congressional records, HJR 192, which I will read to you right now so that you're very clear, and then you can get further reference to it. You must know that in order to understand also part of what we're telling you, because if you're operating or doing business lacking that knowledge, your concepts will be wrong, and you will be talking into a venue and jurisdiction that you assume is legitimate, which is actually racketeering. And they will railroad you and steal your property for the banks, and the banks split it with the politicians who are partners. This is what they've been doing. Are we clear? First, we got to explain to people what's been going on. The politicians have been passing color of law for the bankers, as they have been actually partnership and deputy knights for the Popes of Rome under a secret treaty of Verona. And the bankers, through their corporations, have been paying the politicians back through slush funds, contributions for their campaigns to hide the bribery. And so the people are going before these courts that have no judicial power. They're actually administrative clerk officers under the executive branch of government, having no judicial power whatsoever, yet exercising that in violation of law and pretending to be the assigned delegates under the Republic, when in fact they're operating in a private, for-profit, corporate capacity foreign to the Constitution. Thus, when the people go before them and assume that they're getting due process, that's the least of what's going on. And if they're not aware of that, logically they're going to talk into the jurisdiction, or they're going to be making verbal statements when everything they should be saying should be on the record and for the record and documented and made in evidence and made a part of the case, starting with the fact of taking their oath and their bond for value. And it should be put in documents. You do not have a lot of verbal conversations with them criminals, because they're going to try to make you look like you're the criminal.
For the record,
Yeah.
Let everything be for the record.
Okay. Yeah. And
The reason why is so that it could be reviewed at a later date. Whatever is not said for the record can be dismissed if you try to bring it back up later on by a higher tribunal. That's why you have to say for the record.
That's why you document it.
okay.
You know how they say, whatever you say can and will be used against you? That's what that means.
Yes, I do request the transfer. When I was in for 5 hours to fight with them last week, so I asked them for the record already. And so my next question is, how do I put my house in the trust? Is it having some kind of format or somebody you could help me to do it?
No. Myself and Brother Taj can assist you with that.
Okay.
Because there's a procedure that has to be done with that. And it also depends on your current status. If you started rescinding your contracts, proclaimed your nationality, and started rescinding those adhesion contracts, it's against you. You want to ensure that you are in your proper person before you start dealing with things of that nature, because they're going to use that against you as their weapon to dispute you if you start doing that. So you don't want to disqualify yourself and incriminate yourself by filing lawful documents and things, and you have not rescinded the contracts to show that you are part of their jurisdiction or show that you're a ward of the state. So it's a process where many things have to be done simultaneously for you to be effective in this. We're not sure where you're at along the way, but that's something we can talk about off the record.
Okay. Okay then. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. Well, I only have a 20-day left. I need to go back to the court, or else, like I need to go back to the court to stop to appeal the case to stop that foreclosure.
You can do a writ of error.
That I don't know what that is.
That's why you're where you are.
Okay.
You want to get that information. That's why you're in the temple.
Okay.
You're going to do a writ of error, and that will create an injunction.
Okay.
Don't ask for an injunction, or stop, or stay. Do a writ of error. Name the areas that we talked, or bill a particular, and show where the flaws are or the misrepresentations. And that creates what you call a challenge that they must answer, because they cannot make a final judgment when there's a lis pendens, or what you would call there's litigation pending. Means that's not clear. And if there's a writ of error, then the judge has to stop and make everybody examine it and answer to it if there's a flaw. And there's a lot of flaws already.
Yeah. And I asked them to present me the deed of a trust. They could not present it.
Let's make this very clear.
Yeah.
See what you're saying?
Yeah.
I asked them.
Oh, I demanded. Yeah.
No, listen.
Yeah.
I asked them. You don't ask them anything. You demand it in a writ.
Yeah. I
If
did
you ask verbal questions, it's at the discretion.
No.
And because they know they're operating in a fraud,
Yeah.
that discretion they will dismiss. But if you do a writ or an affidavit, it must be answered.
Yeah, I did a 5 times after David. They demanded they do not care to respond.
All right, now, when they fail to answer, remember that at that time, they're in default. You have a right to go after their bond at that time.
Yes, that's what I'm going to. I want to shoot.
That's what you want to do.
So-
Who's the carrier for their bond?
I don't know those things yet, but I am.
Stop already. Stop already.
Okay.
If you got the bond, you're supposed to find out who carries it. Now keep in mind, when you're dealing with public officials or public servants or contractors, in order for them to do business by law, now keep this in mind, a charter / warrant / delegation of authority order, which is a DOA, are all synonyms.
Okay.
And they must have a bond. If they don't have a bond, they cannot do business. Are we clear? So their oath and their bond goes together.
Okay.
Are we clear?
Yes.
Now,
So how do I find that out?
just hear me out so that you can be clear.
Yes.
The charter and bond, or warrant and bond, is referred to in law as a quo warranto. So quo warranto is the lawful warrant that gave them authority to do what they're doing. The lack of it means they have no authority to do what they're doing. The command for them to produce it is not optional. They must produce it upon command. If you fail to ask for it, they waive it. Meaning that any right you don't exercise, they act like you've abandoned it. Now, keep in mind, in government, it's the duty of the nationals and the citizens to enforce the Constitution. Meaning that you're supposed to tell them what to do. Now, if you don't, they'll start telling you what to do.
You know, also, remember, the magistrate that you call him a judge is a pay rule. He's neutral. He's only there to balance the books. So that's why Grand Sheik is telling you that you have to tell them what to do, because he comes there in a neutral position. And you have to tell him what you want the court to do. That's what the so-called term motion means. It means move the court. So the only thing that can make a court move is a motion. And I'm not suggesting do a motion, because the motion, according to their templates and their jurisdiction, is asking for permission. But you do it in the nature of an affidavit and tell them within that what you want them to do. And the affidavit is considered a motion, and it tells the court what you want the court to do. That's why I said you have to close the case. If you don't tell the court to do anything, the court is going to rule in the favor of the one who is telling them to do it, right or wrong. The judge doesn't necessarily have to agree with the plaintiff. But if the plaintiff is the only one that moved the court, then he has to rule in favor of the plaintiff. That's how that goes. So that's what a default judgment means. That means that if a plaintiff files a motion to do something, to tell the court to do something, extract $50,000 from this woman, based on because this person failed to pay me.
And you don't rebut.
It could be bogus in its nature, and the person might not even know you. But if you don't rebut it and counter it and respond to it, then the court has to rule in favor of the plaintiff and say, well, you own $50,000 just for the simple fact that you acquiesced to it and didn't respond. So by you showing up to court don't mean you respond either. You respond through paperwork. You have to move the court and counter it. You have to balance it. That's what balancement deals with. It's the justice system, and you have to bring balancement to the court. If you don't, it's going to rule in favor of the plaintiff always.
Okay, got that. Thank you.
That's why you start reducing what you say and increase what you write.
Got that. Okay.
All right?
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
All right.
Can I ask you?
Peace, bro. How you doing?
Peace, bro.
Islam. I just wanted to know if you'd be able to give me
Talk up a little. Talk up a little.
on top of, yeah. I was wondering if you'd be able to give me a brief little history on how we as Moors started to fall under the tags of Negro, blacks, and colored.
To make it simple for the average person, we could go more deeper into the Spanish Inquisition, which is the major root of this, and then the Secret Treaty of Verona, which is the political agreement of the parties to enforce it, which includes the Christian black codes. But let's make it simple. When they closed the Freedmen's Bureau in 1868, the Freedmen's Bureau was set up, it would have to give these people that were held to servitude by Europeans doing business at the Maghreb, that's Morocco, the most extreme west, or what is called North America. The Freedmen's Bureau was to give them back their names, their nationality, and teach them the fundamental principles of citizenship, constitutional principle. And it was also dealing with the 3630 parallel, that is the recolonization of the people between the Rocky Mountains and the Alleghenies. Now, it stayed open approximately about 3 years. They squandered the finance and closed it and set up a system, a deceptive system to bureaucratize slavery. That bureaucratization of slavery was the creation of what is called the courts. the corpse amendment. It is sometimes called the 3 dead badges of law. Mortuary, mort, you civil little mortus. The corpse amendment is known as the 14th Amendment, where it took the corpse, and from the corpse, they made the corporation.
That's right.
And the corporation is the artificial person, which is the political zombie known as the 14th Amendment person, and thereby give that person political life, but does not have living, breathing life. And therefore, in 1868, the 14th Amendment created the zombie or artificial person by which the Christians could maintain economic control over persons held to servitude without appearing openly that they were maintaining slavery. Therefore, the 14th Amendment serves exactly that purpose politically. This is one of the reasons why Noble Ali said to the Moors, if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality. He also said the 14th and 15th Amendment, you understand, is not necessary for the salvation of my people and citizens. It was used to bring those without power back into the constitutional fold of government. When the South and the North was battling, because they were battling over what? Your estate and industry. You get the point? So in order to bureaucratize slavery, not only did they adopt the Christian Black Codes of 1724 into all the states, they set up the 14th Amendment. So the 14th Amendment and the Christian Black Codes of 1724 were put in place to support bureaucratized slavery. And so, in order not to be charged with human trafficking, they reinforced the code brands, not just burning, like the people think branding means they put a hot iron on people, like they do cattle, from which the word chattel comes. They branded them with their European names, which would make them in law, quote unquote, write this down everybody, stateless persons. Now, for stateless persons to exercise rights, they would thereby need to be recognized by the rest of the civilized world under constitutional principle, which is in place to preserve and secure the rights of people. It doesn't give them rights. It's in place to secure their rights from corrupt government. Once you understand that, you can understand Noble Ali's mission, the primal part of it, that's set forth in the divine warning by the prophet for the nations, where he says, help me in my mission to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution of the United States of America. Of course, when you start doing that, you'll discover that the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the United States and Morocco and the Ordinance of 1787, or what you call the Northwest Territories, set the foundation for the nature of this government in 1787, 1788, with the adoption of the Republican form of government for the United States of North America. And thus, this is why Obama, when he went to Egypt, what you call Egypt, he exposed to the world that the United States Constitution is derived from Muslim law. And his wife triangulated and went to the Alhambra, the last stronghold of the Moors. Then he came back and they signed the rights of indigenous people. And then Rahm Emanuel left the White House in 2010, and on the entry of the North Gate, which is December the 22nd, the entry of the winter solstice, according to Circle 7, issued that proclamation concerning Noble Ali and the Moorish movement, as he took the office of the sister city of Mecca, which is called Chicago, and sent a message to the Moors. Then President Obama and his wife, they had pictures taken of them walking through double doors, so must know the double doors represent the higher self and the lower self. It also represents the duality in the nature of government, dealing with the de jure government and the de facto government. You see, the republic versus the feudal law of the democracy system. And right to the left of them, as they enter the doors, you'll see a guard standing there, due guard, with the Moorish flag, clear as day. Okay. Now, that's why those names and brands were enforced, because it makes us stateless persons, and anything that is bought, sold, or transferred in those brands or name have no judicial standi, no standing at law. And thus for us to even begin to have an argument in law, we must be in proprio persona. Keep in mind that the status and estate in law are equals.
Islam.
Peace.
Islam.
There's a lot more,
Islam, all right?
we can go with, the letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mutuo,
Yeah.
yeah.
Proprio.
Multu proprio.
Yeah.
Now that means in his own hands. Now you have an apostolic letter issued by Pope Francis. Do you all have it there?
No, we don't. You can read it.
Well, you can go on the site and what you're going to look at, you're just going to type in your computer, the apostolic letter issued montu proprio, and that's of the Supreme Pontiff Francis. And the subject matter is on the jurisdiction of judicial authorities of Vatican City State in criminal matters. We will analyze it later, but first we will read it, all right?
Islam.
From Pope Francis, Motu Proprio, Apostolic Letter. In our times, the common good is increasingly threatened by transnational organized crime, the improper use of the markets and of the economy, as well as by terrorism. It is therefore necessary for the international community to adopt adequate legal instruments to prevent and counter criminal activities by promoting international judicial cooperation on criminal matters. In ratifying numerous international conventions in these areas and acting also on behalf of Vatican City State, the Holy See has constantly maintained that such agreements are effective means to prevent criminal activities that threaten human dignity and the common good and peace. With a view to renewing the Apostolic See's commitment to cooperate to these ends by this apostolic letter issued montu proprio, I establish that 1. The competent judicial authorities of Vatican City State shall also exercise penal jurisdiction over A. Crimes committed against the security, the fundamental interest, or the patrimony of the Holy See, and B. Crimes referred to subcategory in Vatican City State law number 8 of 11 July 2013, containing supplementary norms on criminal law matters. In the Vatican City State law number 9 of 11 July 2013, containing amendments to the Criminal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code. When such crimes are committed by the persons referred to in paragraph 3 below in the exercise of their functions. C. Any other crime whose prosecution is required by an international agreement ratified by the Holy See if the perpetrator is physically present in the territory of Vatican City State and has not been extradited. 2. The crimes referred to in paragraph 1 are to be judged pursuant to the criminal law in force in Vatican City State at the time of their commission without prejudice to the general principles of the legal system on the temporal application of criminal laws. 3. For the purposes of Vatican criminal law, the following persons are deemed, quote-unquote, public officials. A. Members, officials, and personnel of the various organs of the Roman Curia and of the institutions connected to it. B, that's very important, pay attention to that. B, papal legates and diplomatic personnel of the Holy See. C, those persons who serve as representatives, managers, or directors, as well as persons who even de facto manage or exercise control over the entities directly dependent on the Holy See and listed in the registry of canonical judicial persons kept by the government of Vatican City State. D, any other persons holding an administrative or judicial mandate in the Holy See, permanent or temporary, paid or unpaid, irrespective of that person's seniority. 4, the jurisdiction referred to in paragraph 1 comprises also the administrative liability of judicial persons arising from crimes as regulated by Vatican City State laws. 5, when the same matters are prosecuted in other states, the provisions in force in Vatican City State on concurrent jurisdiction shall apply. 6, the content of Article 3 of Law number 21 November 1987, which approves the judicial order of Vatican City State, remains in force. This I decide and establish, and anything to the contrary, notwithstanding, I establish that the apostolic letter issued montu, Proprio, will be promulgated by its publication in the Observatory Romano, entering into force 1 September 2013. Given in Rome at the Apostolic Palace on 11 July 2013, the first of my pontificate. Franciscus, are we clear?
Yep.
Now, what people need to know is what the Roman Curia is. That is all subdivisional corporate entities under the jurisdiction of the Popes of Rome. And so you already know, as we've been teaching you all for years, that the United States Corporation is within the Roman Curia.
Right.
And thus, this is also why we have in here issues that we've given to you all before, and I'll go over a few of them. And so you must put things into perspective. When Noble Drawley set up the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, the Moorish Science Temple of America, going back to the old Canaanite Temple, which is essentially these orders are simply under the umbrella of the Moorish Divine and National Movement, which is the mother movement. In harmony with other loyal and faithful Moors, members of the temple, and all other true American citizens who have been in support of this movement, who have sympathy with these issues brought to bear by the prophet. And so therefore there are counter moves made by those who are enemies to the Republic and enemies to the prophet, and I will read some of them, and we've issued this to our Moors for actually a few decades. And this happens to be in the syllabus today. So I'm going to read this. All natural people and citizens should be aware of and know that the following are laws applicable at North America via the United States. So we're talking about that entity, you understand, that is operating under color distinguished from the Republic. And so the following information and facts should be read and analyzed with the knowledge and the condition that the reader is conscious of the lawful distinctions made between constitutionally sanctioned laws, departments, offices, entities, or activities de jure, and those laws or policies which have been or are constructed under a color of law or under a color of authority, being unlawful de facto or unconstitutional in character. Law and concept corrections are always in order. Number 1, the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, is not a constitutionally sanctioned United States Republic government agency. The IRS is an agency of the IMF, International Monetary Fund. For references for those who doubt, underneath is law case so that you can do the tracers. Diversified metal products versus IRS and ALCB 93-405 ETC, Public Law 94-564. That's the Senate Report 94-1148, page 5967, Reorganization Plan number 26, Public Law 102-391. References so because we already know that people in and out of the temples will be trying to discredit what we're saying and saying that we're making up stuff or that we're running our own movement and we're not following what the prophet said. What the prophet said, enforce the Constitution. Number 2, the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, is an agency of the United Nations. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, page 816, for those who doubt. We're giving reference. Number 3, the United States has not had a treasury since 1921 AD. That's 41 Statute, Chapter 214, page 654. 4, the United States Treasury is now the International Monetary Fund. Presidential Documents, Volume 24 number 4, page 113, 22 USC 285, 2887. Number 5, the United States does not have any employees because there is no longer a legitimate United States. No more reorganizations. And after 200 years of bankruptcy, it is finally over. That's Executive Order 12803. Number 6, the FCC, the CIA, the FBI, NASA, and all of the other alphabet gangs were never a lawful part of the United States government, even though the United States government, through its trustees or representatives, held stock in the agency. So that means they are consciously slaveholders, which means they are traitors to the government. Are we clear?
Islam.
Peace.
Now, I'm not going to read all of the sources so that you can resource them. I'm just going to read the principles. But understand, I have support underneath each one of them. Will show you the source, to show you that these people, these politicians, these leader guys, all of these politicians know this information. 7, the Social Security numbers are issued by the United Nations through the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And the application for a Social Security number is the SSI or SS5 form. The Department of the Treasury, which is really the IMF, issues the SS5 forms and not the Social Security Administration. The new SS5 forms do not state who publishes them, while the old form states they are from the Department of the Treasury. 8, there are no lawful judicial courts operating under the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation doing business at North America. Lawful courts have not been in existence since 1789. Article 3 judges do not enforce statutes and codes. Executive administrators enforce statutes and codes. Number 9, there have not been any lawful judges within the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation doing business at North America since 1789. There have just been administrators. 10, according to GATT, that's GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades, you must have a Social Security number. 11, New York City is defined in federal regulations as the United Nations. And Rudolph Giuliani stated on C-SPAN that New York City is the capital of the world, and for once he told the truth. 12, Social Security is not insurance, nor is it a contract. There is no trust fund supporting it. 13, your Social Security check comes directly from the International Monetary Fund, which is an agency of the United Nations. Number 14, you own no property under the U.S. democracy. Slaves cannot own property. And read carefully the deed on the property that you have been duped into thinking is yours. You will note that you are listed as a tenant on the misrepresented document. Number 15, the most powerful court in America is not the United States Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Number 16, the King of England financially backed both sides of the American Revolutionary War. Number 17, you cannot use the U.S. Constitution to defend yourself because you are not a party to it. That must be qualified. That must be qualified. But I'm reading this off so that your concepts will be corrected. 18, America is the name of two of the world's recognized continents. The United States Corporation doing business at North America is a British colony. The United States is a corporation, is not the landmass, and it existed before the Revolutionary War, and the British troops did not leave North America until 1796. Number 19, Britain is owned by the Vatican, the popes of Rome. Now you understand the cure, the Roman cure that's talked about in the montu Proprio? Number 20, the Pope can abolish any law in the United States. Now, do you see motu proprio again?
What is that?
Number 21, a 1040 form is for tribute paid to Britain. 22, the Pope claims to own the entire planet through the laws of conquest and discovery. 23, the Pope has ordered the genocide and enslavement of millions of people. 24, the Pope's laws are obligatory on everyone. 25, we are slaves and own absolutely nothing. Not even what we think are our children. These are law cases, you understand, so you can make reference. That's why they're here too. We'll make sure that you all have them.
Islam.
26, military dictator George Washington divided up the states, quote-unquote, estates, and politically formed them into districts. 27, the people does not include you and me. This is the position that they're holding. Keep that in mind.
Remember, this is case law.
This is case law. Keep in mind.
This is not our own words. This is actual case law.
These are all case laws. Now we're going to complete this. 28, it is not the duty of the police to protect you. Their job is to protect the corporation and arrest the code violators or the code breakers. 29, everything in the United States is up for sale. The bridges, roads, water, schools, hospitals, prisons, airports, etc., etc. And did anybody take time to check out who bought Klamath Lake? That's Executive Order 12803, just in case those persons who dispute what we're saying try to disclaim us or try to divert your attention from what we're telling you. 30, we are human capital. That's Executive Order 13037. 31, the UN, United Nations, has financed the operation of the United States government for over 50 years. And the United States Department of Treasury is part of the UN, see the above, and now owns every man, woman, and child in America. This is their claim. And the UN also owns all the land of America in fee simple, and according to the above site. And the good news is that we don't have to fulfill our fictitiously constructed obligations, and you can discharge a fictitious obligation with another's fictitious obligation. Are we clear?
Islam.
Now you must know that the United States Corporation is a body politic and owned by the Popes of Rome via the Roman Cure. So when the Pope issued that apostolic letter, motu proprio, he's talking about all these judges and all these politicians that have been using the ultra-virus statutes to protect themselves from prosecution, claiming to be sovereign having sovereign immunity, it has now been removed by Pope Francis. So that means they're on their own. So you already know, if the Pope issues montu, proprio, apostolic letter stating the same, and it's in force as of September the 1st, 2013, you can look for some kind of terrible things to be happening within short order for people who are trying to cover up what's getting ready to happen to them. Now, so what you're going to see is a lot of public officials who are going to resign their positions immediately to try to jump away from what's going to happen, and that is that they're going to be charged with war crimes. So that means the Secretary of the Treasury is going to resign. A lot of these secretaries and Geithner and all the rest of them are going to resign their posts as of September the 1st, 2013, which we've got coming right on up here. So you already know. So a lot of these bankers are going to be running because these Europeans are going to be going after them with their rods and their staffs to comfort them. Are we clear? Our people need to be abreast on what's up, and us being grand chiefs, keep in mind, in accord with the divine warning by the prophet, he warned us that these things were going to come if we didn't carry out the law, and I suggest to you to pay attention to the divine warning by the prophet for the nations, and for us and others, having not carried out the mission of the Moorish Divine National Movement, in that we have not enforced the Constitution, and in fact some of the grand governors of the Moorish Science Temple of America have abridged their duty and have betrayed the prophet and the movement, and these Moors are not competent or capable to protect their property and their lost estate, etc., on an immediate level, and are going to suffer a lot of these nigger problems. Understand that they're going to have to go on a crash course, learn law, and start putting their stuff in the state since the grand governors won't do that, etc., and start going after these people's bond, because now their protection has been pulled out from them by the Pope of Rome himself. In other words, they're taking the high road. So montu, proprio. Y'all better learn law, learn how to use this stuff, take your places amongst the affairs of men, you understand, and be a part of this Moorish Divine and National Movement, and helping in this great missionary work of helping to uplift fallen humanity. And so the prophet wants strong, competent, faithful Moors. He wants strong brothers and sisters who think that we can better our condition. Are we clear?
Islam.
Montu, proprio.
Islam. Right, Islam. I got a question for Nature. Can you? I'm good. Can you go over what a contract is and the importance of a contract, and also and also why we use the Black's Law Dictionary?
Okay, Islam. I'm going to address that question and relate it to what we're going over now. A contract is an agreement between two or more parties. It's a pact. It's an engagement. It's an agreement. Whatever you agree to verbally or in writing, you become held to the terms and conditions thereof. So what that means is for every action is a reaction. This is rooted in nature. This is beyond the mundane contract. Contract itself is symbolic. We can make a contract mentally, or we can make a contract physically. We can make one verbally. So we got to be careful when we throw the word contract around, because that's a covenant, that's a pact or an agreement that we make with either our Creator, ourselves, or our fellow man. So that's just on a metaphysical level. Now bringing it back down to how we deal with contracts in government. Article 1, Section 10 of the United States of America Free National Constitution states that we have a right to contract and we have a right not to contract. So the Constitution protects your right to contract with two or more parties. Now that could be business related, that could just be dealing with social affairs, that could be dealing with an economic venue, etc. But when we make certain contracts, the contracts determine or creates the law. The law is only based on what the people say, what the people expression of their will is. That's what a contract is based on, the will of the people. So if you and I have a will to do something together, and we express the terms and conditions of how we're going to carry that out, that becomes the law. A law is only held liable to the ones who agree to that law. Outside of the agreement or the non-agreement, there is no obligation to that particular law. So law is vague and broad in its nature, and we need to be more specific when we use the word law. Because laws is only based on contract. That's it. That's it. So how does that apply to us? As citizens of the United States of America, North America, Canaanland, this portion of America, South America, etc., according to the geographical boundaries, the citizens of that geographical boundaries within their representation raise people to sovereign power, meaning they choose their representatives, they elect them. And they elect their representatives to carry out the expression of the will of themselves. That formulates a government. That's what a government is. The people coming together collectively, occupying a geographical jurisdiction that they occupy, they control, they're natives of, etc. Within that geographical boundary, they themselves elect or choose their representatives. That's what a republic form of government is. They have what they call national standards, which is a constitution, a flag, a language,
The seal.
seals, etc. All these things constitute national standards. And within their national constitution expresses the terms and conditions that the citizens, they themselves, among themselves, agree to or agree upon if they choose to live within those geographical jurisdictions. That creates a contract. That's a contract between the citizens of that particular land. The Constitution is a contract. It's an agreement between two or more parties, i.e. between the citizens of that geographical landmass.
40 Moors and 25 Europeans.
Well,
that's
no,
right.
yeah, no, that's what the signing of that contract or agreement
That's
was
the
all
signing,
about.
yeah.
But the contract is binding between the citizens, the free nationals of that territory, of that land. All of the citizens.
And those representatives.
That's what the prophet was talking about. We are part and parcel of this said government and must live the life accordingly. The citizens collectively. The United States of America in its Constitution only pertains to natural persons. Means free, living, breathing,
Yes.
human,
Sentient beings.
not artificial persons. Artificial persons are wards of the states. They're slaves. Therefore, they're not a part of the contract of the United States of America. That's what you hear when they say, or what we just read in this document, where you're not a party of the Constitution, then that means the Constitution doesn't apply to you. How you become not a party to it if you were branded or cast out of that agreement. That was back to your question earlier. You asked, how do we get known as Negro, blacks, and colored? Well, we were classed away from the Constitution by giving us slave names and names that wasn't in accordance with the national standards, i.e. the agreement.
So we did
So
that
we
to
was
ourselves.
taken away from the agreement of the United States of America. Therefore, we were branded Negro, blacks, and colors, i.e. because we wasn't a part of that contract. So we were known as stateless persons. So because we were stateless persons, they gave us a name that reflect that. Negro, black, and colored, that represents dead people.
But we did that to ourselves.
Well, we did that through, now we go into the metaphysical level with it. We did that by not honoring our mothers and our fathers.
Okay.
Because we strayed away after the gods of Europe whom we knew nothing of. So by collectively over time, we practice things of dishonor, not just here in this portion of Mexico, but all across the land as well, even Africa, Egypt, Kivalon, etc. We practice things and principles that were unconstitutional going back thousands and thousands of years. That all leads up to that. Remember, we were the first slaveholders on the planet. The Moors were, the Aboriginal people were the first slaveholders on the planet. So those type of things were unconstitutional in nature. So what the result of that, the effect of that, the karmatic return of that is because we violated the contract. Nature's contract. The divine contract. We violated that, thus we were known as Negro, Blacks, and Colored. So what we're doing is reaping the karmatic debt that we put out. That's the metaphysical aspect of your question. That's why the European who colonized us, conquered us, and took over our land and renamed us. That's why he did that, because of the karmatic debt. It wasn't personal. Because they're a reflection of us anyway, which we created them through carnal thoughts and deeds. We created the European or the pale-skinned nations of Europe as the counter to us. So that's another lesson.
So which nationalities are actually Moors? Like,
all of them.
If you want to know the real truth, the world history is Moorish history.
All nationalities are Moors by descent. Remember, even the European is descendant of the Moors nation and Great Moabite nation.
That's why they have Moors in all their coats of arms.
Don't discredit them from being a member of the human family. They are too. They're just reflection of us.
And they're hybrids, but they're still part of the human.
They're descendants of us, so they're our children. But we can't discredit them as human. They're doing unlawful things because that's their nature, but we created them to do that. They're like a cursed seed.
Okay. The word Moor itself, where is it derived from? Moor.
It's a multiple dialect term when we say Moor, which can be spelled in different ways, but it's the root of many different terms that came from many different dialects.
And it actually is from the last high priest in the Yucatan, or what you call in Mexico, Moor.
Yes,
but it's also derived from Mu, Lemuria, and ancient Moroccans.
And Moabite.
And so when you see the name Al-Moroccan, Al is Moorish Latin meaning descended down from, and Moroccan is Moor. And the corruption of Al-Moroccan is American. And so when you even see the dynamics of human development and even the war records, you will see up until the 1800s, when they made reference to the Asiatic African peoples, that the name Moor and African were used synonymously.
Islam. Now, also going back to that contract, I want to show us something else. Remember I said a contract is an agreement, a pact, right? So by us accepting the names Negro, Black, and Colored, let's go to Act 6 of the Divine Constitution. What does it say? These names were given to who? Slaves. By who? By slaveholders. All right, so let's deal with that Act 6 for a minute. So if Negro, Black, and Colored were names given to slaves, and then we answer up to that by filling out an application where it says race, and we put black.
Yeah.
That's a contract that we just made with the devil. And when I say devil, I'm not talking about another person or European.
That's life
or
nation.
nation.
Lived backwards.
I'm talking about the lower self itself.
Okay.
That's the lower nature, which is not agreeable to the citizenship of the land. We just barred ourselves away from the free national standards of the land by accepting a slave name that's unconstitutional. That's a contract that we made where we basically acquiesced and said, I'm in default, I'm out. I'm not a part of this constitutional construct. That's nobody else doing but us. That's where they tricked us at with that 13th Amendment when they was talking about voluntary and involuntary servitude. Was prohibited here in the United States, meaning that it's an adhesion contract that we made because we didn't know what we were actually saying. So it's adhesion in nature. But the assumption of it is that the contract is binding because we have not challenged. So as long as we keep answering and saying we're black, or my name is John Smith, which is still another European slave family name, which comes from a plantation. We're agreeing to be a party to that plantation and not being a party to the free national standards of the land. So every time we agree to these names, it's a contract that we're making, or what we're doing is keeping the contract in force. That's what it means in law, in force. So if a contract was binding 100 years ago, what they do is if that contract is still valid, they say that that contract is still in force. That means it's still valuable in a court of law. It's still valuable in the courts of men, period. So as long as we keep answering up to these names and principles, it's unconstitutional. That's a contract that we're making that's against the national standards and against the people. So that's why the prophet said that we become subject to all of the misuses and mistreatments that the citizens care to bestow upon us. Because the citizens are the government. We keep looking at the representatives as the government, but the people are the government. We choose the representatives to carry out our will. Right. So it's like the representatives work for us. We're the government. And when we do something that the other citizens, the free nationals, disagree with, that's what the word unconstitutional means, not the document itself. We have a written constitution, but that's not even the Constitution. The Constitution is the will of the free man.
And is law of the zodiac.
So we gotta think like free men and free women. The language of a free man, the character of a free man, the personality of a free man. That's the Constitution. That's expressed on paper that we all agreed upon, which is referred to as the United States of America's Constitution.
So basically getting back to the divine laws of nature.
Yes,
and that's
nature is God.
And that's referred to in the Declaration of Independence, where they say nature's law and nature's high. They're talking about divine law of Constitution, the workings of nature, i.e. law of the Moors.
That's what it meant when they said that we hold these truths to be self-evident. And all men was created equal and endowed by their Creator
with certain unalienable rights. And unalienable rights cannot be sold, put on a commercial venue, or transferred to another. And what do? We lost our birthrights, you see?
That's what birthrights is. Divine rights. Rights that you inherited from your Creator. They're not transferable, which means that government can't give you rights. Individual people can't give you rights. Because when we say government, we're saying people. And our people are under the assumption that government gives them rights. Only thing government is giving you is privileges. Right. And that's because the government is de facto. The government is supposed to acknowledge
and secure and protect
divine, natural, inalienable rights. They're supposed to attest to that and protect them. That's why the Declaration of Independence states to secure these rights. Governments were instituted among men. That's the spirit of the United States of America's Constitution and government system. That's the heart of it. That's the spirit of it. To secure the rights that already exist within you, the government was just instituted to secure those rights that they already acknowledge.
Serves no other purpose.
So when they start talking about privileges, and you can't do this without permission of this agency or this corporation, you already know that that's an overthrow of the republic. But the problem is we keep agreeing to it. Once we agree to what they have said, then that creates another law. And that law is just based on agreement. So anytime you subpoena to these courtrooms, 9 times out of 10 is dealing with contract law. It's not dealing with the law of the land. It's based on some type of obligation that they're assuming you have. Some type of agreement that they say you have made. Some type of phony contract that they say you have made. That's what they're bringing you to court for. It's really called breach of contract.
That's a suit.
A suit, a citation,
a bill of exchange,
a complaint, a lawsuit, is really breach of contract. And the courtroom that they're bringing you into is contract law.
Fact.
It's really civil in nature.
De facto.
Exactly, but that's 9 times out of 10, that's what you're up against, contract law. So what you're supposed to be asking for is a VOD and finding out what contract that they're saying you breached. And what contract do I have with this corporation, with this agency, with your boss, whoever you saying you're working for, the Pope or the Vatican?
Yeah.
Because I proclaim my free national name and religion. Therefore, I gave the church and Christianity back to them. So I'm not even obligated and don't owe any allegiance to the Vatican. This is what I'm saying to you, what you need to understand where this montu is coming from. Because the Vatican Church colonized the world. And that's the trust that was created that the United States is in trust of.
It's the corporate arm. In other words, that's the war arm for the popes through the secret treaty of Rome. Is the U.S. corporation.
That's what all their claims, even to the land, is under the Vatican.
It's called the Roman Curia.
If you go back to the Holy Quran of the Moors and Temple of America, the prophet told us that, but we just had to read them between the lines and go study. He told us everything, we would have went back to sleep. But he said that the Church of Rome was the first who crucified who? Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah.
So it shows you how long that this church has been doing business, and they deviate under many different names, actually. But they're the ones that even crucified Jesus.
Of course.
According to who? It said according to their law, under the Roman yoke and law. That's the popes of Rome.
Right. And they got
Meaning that the oldest rivals and the oldest wars known to humanity was between the Roman Empire and the Moorish Empire. That's the oldest wars known to man.
And it continues today.
And it's still going on today.
And the Moorish movement is set in place to bring some remedy for the heirs of the estate who forgot that they're heirs to the world's largest estate.
Islam.
Islam.
The video timed out. Can y'all refresh it on this one, please? Islam. That's a key, and that's lessons, because when the prophet tells about proclaiming our free national name and religion, we must understand we're dealing with true religion, not the hadith, not the dogmatic religion that our people are accustomed to. Right. And one of the reasons why we have to proclaim our religion of our forefathers is because all of these names are referred to as Christian names.
That's right.
That's another contract that they have on paper that they're holding us and our children to. When your children go to school and they say that they got to take these immunization shots and all of this, that's under the Christian codes. The statutes that they're using is under the Christian codes. Every individual corporation, i.e. artificial person that has a birth certificate, is on paper listed as a Christian, regardless of if you agree to that or not. So your status and your religion on paper as a slave is already listed as a Christian. And if you don't proclaim otherwise, you're going to be listed as a Christian, and they're going to hold you to the Christian black codes. That's why the prophet told us that we must proclaim our forefathers' religion, because the last known proclamation of religion is Christianity through the birth certificate. And if we don't rescind the contract of the birth certificate, we're going to continue to be listed or classified as a slave.
So,
especially the name, because the name is a Christian name. We must understand that. So when we go to court and we tell them we're John Smith, or they ask for identification, and it says Mary Williams and all of this, those are Christian names, which automatically denotes jurisdiction and possession. And it's a franchise name where you're taxed based on that.
So because you're European.
Excuse me?
So you're actually European going under the names.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're paying a tariff for using their family name.
Yes.
Remember, we go back to that era of slavery when our forefathers was so-called freed from the plantation.
Mm-hmm.
He had to go down to the city and show them his freedom papers. that the slaveholder released them from the plantation. And he received a name when he did that. You gotta understand this. And that's where Smith, Jones, Johnson, Williams, and all these other last names that we use, those are the last known names of the slaveholder. That's not our last names, that's their last names that they gave us when they released us from the plantation. So that means that now we're saying that we're free to work in the public for other plantations.
Right.
So now when we go apply for an application to work somewhere else, they want to know who you are and who owns you, or who owns you at a previous time. And you let them know Williams owned me before.
Right.
So now what you're doing is you're paying tax because you're still using the name Williams.
Right.
So Williams is getting a royalty because we keep using his name.
Yeah.
Now you understand the manumission of the so-called slaves, the transferring of the so-called slaves under the emancipation from the European families to the Congress, and thus the necessitation of the construct known as the 14th Amendment. The dead person made life. In other words, so the corpse is made a person.
So Black's Law Dictionary.
Black's Law?
Yeah.
Henry Campbell Black.
Black. And who was that?
Henry Campbell Black is a European, right, who is and was an esquire at one time, once again part of barristers, owed his allegiance to the courts, but he was a scholar, and he wrote a treatise of law definitions that the tribunals use as a standard, and that's not just the Black's Law Dictionary that they use, but that's one of the most popular sources of law definitions that the courts use traditionally.
Okay.
But there's also Bouvier's and Barron's Law Dictionary. So they use a combination of those when they're dealing with interpretation or definitions of cases.
So why are we using the Black's Law?
That's a great question. We use them as a reference to know what is meant by the word.
And keep in mind that the jurisprudence was set forth by the Moors, not the Europeans. They just adopted it in England after they took over. That's why it's always traced back to England when they're talking about the common law. That's why you must know world history to know when they're talking about the doves and the Picts, they're talking about you of England. This is why they would call our children pickaninnies. Because you're the Picts.
Then they said we're going to the picnic.
This is why it's important for our people to know world history, because when they start talking about their history, those who are frauds keep trying to make our people think that our history is only in Kemet and Kivalon. Our history is on the world.
Global.
And in order for you to know your history, you must know world history. And there's no such thing about you studying Moorish history and not studying European history, because their history is Moorish history. Exactly. That's why you see that king of Freising in the coat of arms of the popes of Rome.
Islam. So once again, also go into the Barron's Law Dictionary and the Bouvier's. That way you'll get familiar, and what we do is we set up, when you study, you set up with several dictionaries. Because what you want to do is cross-reference them. You have the older ones, and you have the newer ones.
Which are watered down.
And the reason, back to your question, why do we use them? Why do Moors use them? The 7th edition, I tell Moors to still go get, not because I want that definition to become a part of your consciousness, but when they send you these presentments, these citations and suits, and they use a word, you need to know what they mean by that word. And then once you understand what they mean by the word, then you go into an older dictionary and look up the same word again. And then you'll know what was meant by that word 70 years ago, or 100 years ago.
But these are all words.
It becomes confirmation to you that you'll see how the times change and how they changed up the laws.
It's called introduction of connotative linguistics in order to dumb the people down. This is one of the reasons why they introduced what is called connotative linguistics in distinction of the denotation in order to dumb the people down. This is why you, I, and us must have etymological or etymology dictionaries, as well as law dictionaries, because that jurisprudence comes from the Moors who taught them during the Renaissance. That's why Noble Ali teaches you in the literature and in this newspaper about the Renaissance, so that you will know that the powers that they have in Europe come from you. And our people keep thinking that constitutional principle and jurisprudence came from the European. It's not his stuff, it's your stuff. And the sooner we can get our people to use their common sense and get back to those ancient principles, then we're going to have problems, because they will continue to be put upon with these abuses, because they themselves will not study law.
And also get a legal thesaurus.
Okay. A legal thesaurus.
Yeah, thesaurus.
Thesaurus.
Okay.
It's necessary.
And that way you will be able to do cross-references to what you call similar or synonymous legal phrases that may be related, but that are not expressed linguistically the same, but are similar. Not unlike, say, a writ of discovery and a bill of particulars, or a quo warranto. They're all related. But if they present it to people who don't know law, they'll think they're just totally unrelated writs, if you get the full point. And so therefore we must bring our people to the level of competence so that they can begin to protect their birthright, which is being stolen every day for the lack of knowledge. And logically, again, this is why Noble Ali said to the Moors that every temple must have a school. It is necessary. And this is also why COINTELPRO operatives made sure certain temples didn't have a school. You see, so we have to be cognizant and upfront and always be on guard to protect the prophet and the movement, our Moorish movement, and enforce the Constitution, because people with turbans and feathers on will also be trying to put you back into slavery, because they got kickbacks from the Skull and Bone members through the 501c3 agreement.
All right, could you talk on the level, both of you could speak on this, on the level of competence and the level of competence that we should have, and the level of competence that we have minus the status.
Let's be clear on this.
Yeah, for the people who make the arguments from the black, Negro, African, Sherry Jackson.
Let's keep it very, very simple. And the best way to do and make sure that it is done in your Sunday school, even with the general public when you're publishing, so that people can understand the importance of this movement, not just because it's interesting information, so that their concepts are correct. Keep in mind that status in law is equal to estate. Now, let's go into the law book. Black's Law. Get another book and put that up there. I will hold this up here. Hold on just a minute. We're going to go directly from the law book so it's not confusing. Status. And this is another reason why it's important for our people to have their tools and for them to have their own schools. Logically, the Europeans who've been sucking off of them are not going to teach those principles which are necessary to make them better citizens. That's the job of the Moorish Divine and Natural movement via the Moorish Science Temple of America. This is one of the reasons why the Europeans infiltrated the temples and made sure they shut down the prophet's paper and made sure that they didn't establish schools so that people would not be competent in these matters, and that they would be repeating what the prophet said without the capacity or the competence to protect the nationality and the birthright. So we're going to law, and while supporting the law case, I will just dispense what it means in law. Status. Status is the legal position of the individual in or with regard to the rest of the community. Status involves the rights, the duties, the capacities, and the incapacities which which determine a person to a given class. It constitutes his status. And thus, when we say that the status of a woman after a decree nisi for the dissolution of her marriage has been made, but before it has been made absolute, is that of a married woman, we mean that she has the same legal rights and liabilities and disabilities as the ordinary married woman. And the term is chiefly applied to persons under a disability or persons who have some peculiar condition which prevents the general law from applying to them in the same way as it does to ordinary persons. So you can look at the constitutional principle. And then it comes, again, it says, status also means estate, because it signifies the condition or the circumstances in which one stands with regard to his property. And so you see people get information and they think because the information is powerful that therefore it applies to them. And this goes on with a lot of people that get a hold of the Uniform Commercial Codes and also information from certain Europeans with the sovereignty movement and think certain principles just apply because they got the information when their status is there transacting business and names that don't belong to them and claim to be Negro, black, and colored, which are unconstitutional. And then they try to use the force of power of the protections of government to secure their right when they themselves are in dishonor. And keep in mind the power of the common law to trump the statutory codes is by virtue of your honor, integrity, and allegiance to those archaic traditions and principles and customs. Therefore, it is incumbent upon you to know something about your culture, etc. That's what makes the common law trump the statutory codes. Keep in mind that the common law harmonizes or vibrates with common sense. And when it doesn't make common sense, it's usually not the common law. And if you can't trace yourself back to the principles of your ancient forefathers, you have no honor. Because the truth of de jure law is protected or secured and recognized by your sacred honor, not by the transference of some fees or some funds. So if you claim the sovereign right or protections of a particular nation state, understand that nationality and citizenship are synonyms. And you can't fess up to constitutional principles for protection without a nationality. And thus, as you see in here, they say that you cannot use the Constitution to defend yourself because you're not a party to it. So now you must go back to the principles of your ancient forefathers, and then you find the Treaty of Peace and Friendship that is at the groundwork that set up the law that is dealt with in the ordinance of 1787, thus the Northwest Territories, North America, and thus the founding, or what you call the establishment of the Republic form of government in North America, etc., was bringing George Washington in as the 9th president under the Republic, securing your rights. Now we have violated the laws and continue to practice those things which delude to slavery, and therefore are continuously held outside of the constitutional fold of government. Noble Drawley established the Moorish Holy Temple of Science after the old Canaanite temple, and then in 1928 adopted a religious affidavit that established the Moorish Science Temple of America, all of which come under the umbrella for you, what? To proclaim your nationality, to do what? To correct your legal standing and status in order to be capable to even beginning to argue your lost estate. Therefore, status is key. Are we clear?
He said, then you will have power to redeem your race. That was the prophet's words. Until then, we do not have the power to redeem our race. If we're not even being considered a part of the race.
Which is my constitution.
And the race is the human family. There's only one race on the planet. That's the human race. But by us saying that we are Negroes, we are black people, colored people, etc., what we're saying is we're not a part of the human species, period.
And at that point, we come under the Christian black codes, which are for chattel, which is derived in French from the word cattle. So therefore, you got the livestock. This is why they do what you call the prime, beef, loan, dead pledges, which are called mortgages in our communities, and gentrify them, and the foreclosures are based in abandonment, and the people are listed in the instruments as tenants, which means they're renting shared property.
Let's also look at the letter here from the Pope, and I'm gonna revamp over this one paragraph because it still pertains to your question. It says, "It is therefore necessary for the international community." Let's stop there. International community. International means between nations. And if we're saying that we're black people, then we're not a part of the nations or any nation. That means international, that word international don't even pertain to us.
Right.
International don't pertain to black, Negro, and colored, or slave. So let's read on. It says the international community. The international community is the human family, plural. Let's be clear on that. It says, "It is therefore necessary for the international community to adopt adequate legal instruments to prevent," we're talking about recourse now, it says to prevent and counter criminal activities by promoting international judicial cooperation on criminal matters. So it's telling us to prepare for what's about to come down the pipe. We have to adopt legal adequate instruments to prevent and counter criminal activities. It says promote international judicial cooperation. That means that we have to network and enforce the enforcement of the Constitution and treaties and all other acts of Congress with the international communities through what we call Title 22 of the United States Codes of Laws that deals with the relationship or the interchange between nations, plural. So we got to take this to an international recourse because you're not going to be able to get recourse here within your own courts because they sold out. So now it's going to go down to every man for himself. And it's really going to trickle down and affect those who are not considered nationals because they're not going to have any protection. Not whatsoever. Even like right now, a person can call himself black and can go to court and get some type of remedy because it's discretionary. Because they're looking at the overall agenda that they have. So they might let a person win here and there according to discretion. It's a case-by-case basis. But it's going to get to the point where you will have no voice, period, if you're not a national. You will have no consideration at law, discretionary or non-discretionary, if you're not at least, at a minimum, declared a free national of the United States. And when the international communities get involved and start to aid and assist and network with each other, those who are considered black will be outside the international construct and will be considered chattel and vagabonds, stateless persons, and will be suffering mistreatments and abuses because the international communities don't recognize them, and they will recognize them as part of the problem.
Outside constitutional forms of government.
Meaning that the de facto democracy form of government, or so-called form of government that we're experiencing, is due to the Negro problem. We have a government that we choose at this time. We have a democracy government because that's what the people want collectively. Until we raise the consciousness of the people, we won't have our republic back. The only way we can restore the republic is by restoring the minds of the people back to their ancient forefathers.
So do y'all actually think y'all see a unification of Negro black colors like coming together?
No, there is no unification of Negro black colors because they're dead. That's like saying, do you got unity at the cemetery?
No. What I meant to say was them actually waking up and claiming their nationality.
Information must be dispensed. Now, What causes the unity is the consciousness. As long as they lack knowledge, their minds are made up on their different secularisms based on belief systems that are fraudulently based in the first instance. And therefore they cannot agree because their belief systems are their constitutions. Men always guide themselves by their constitution. The constitution is called the makeup. Whatever makes up their mind, so be they. And so what a man thinketh, so is he. And until you bring the consciousness there or bring the light, they will remain in the dark. But problem, as the problems of the world increase and things begin to collapse, what they're going to do is take people without honor and cook them and put them in gas chambers because they're going to solve the Negro problem one way or the other. Now, we can either fix this thing or people are going to start disappearing in mass. And of course, unfortunately, with some other people who were claiming to be somebody that they're not, they hurry up and got a nationality, didn't they, in 1948?
Islam, we have a question here on the floor. Bear with us 1 second.
The United States Corporation. What form of government we have?
When you say we sanction the United States Corporation, what do you mean by that?
The United States,
That's charter. What you mean?
their charter. What form of government do we have? The Moroccans and inhabitants of the prior.
It was the Republican Society of Morocco. In other words, the United States really already existed.
And back to what Obama said, we were under Muslim customary law. Is what the common law, but
Not that,
understand, not traditionally what they're going by,
not what they're doing now.
not what they're doing now. But we're going back to, once again, the state of mind of our forefathers. But our society today, our government, our constitution, not as it's being practiced, but the root of this particular government in this land is rooted in Muslim customary law, in ancient Islamism. Ancient.
And this is why
And that's what common law is derived from customary law. That means the custom of the people. Who are the natives of this land? The Moors, the Moorish, the Moroccan, the ancient Moroccan, the Moabites, right? So what we're dealing with is Moroccan customary law. When we say Muslim, or what they say in the book is Muslim customary law, is Muslim customary law, is Moorish customary law, is Moabite customary law. It's all one and the same. We don't separate it. We have to clear that up because people would disassociate themselves from that term because they say, oh, we're not Muslim, or we're not dealing with that, we're not dealing with religion. But that's the common law in its organic state, not what the people from the East got us thinking that we should follow, not the Hadith, not what the imams say we should follow. We're talking about true Muslim customary law.
So when we say not Sharia,
prior to the corruption.
you're saying that you like the Zodiac Constitution.
Yes, because Zodiac Constitution is dealing with the laws of nature.
On top of it.
It's just another term. No, it does, but in its organic state. Meaning that everything from the past. Yeah, that's dealing with cause and effect, yes. Yeah, let's deal with that for a minute. We won't get into that, but not too and tell. But Muslim customary law goes dealing with the laws of nature, deals with cause and effect. Even in other countries, they still practice that today. There is no statutory laws to say, okay, well, if you go steal from him, I'm going to fine you $300 and I'm going to throw you in jail for 6 months. That statutory law says that. Back when you're dealing with ancient Muslim customary law, if you went and stole from him, the effect of that is if he wanted to cut your finger off and do something to you, by law, he can deal with the law of compensation.
Not just that, they would have to give you a return tenfold.
That's what we need to get back to.
Meaning that you would have to get the value back 10 times. That's your fingers, your 10 fingers, you do it with your hands. Well, the thing that we man, you will. That's why when the acts of workings of men, when it comes to the writing of men, they call them manuals.
What about working day and
See, honor is that. There's two things that operate here. Higher self, lower self. Honor, dishonor. In other words, if you learn of your higher self and lower self, you can understand government. What has happened is that the priesthood have interject all this other fraud, including adopting principles from Rome and putting it in Islam, which is why we fell, including their suppressing of women and calling it Sharia law, which is bull, which is a lie. You know, a whole bunch of crap that they're doing, that they're calling Islam, that ain't got nothing to do with Islam. It has to do with private, corrupted agendas that they're claiming Islam just because they happen to claim to be Muslim. Well, Muslim really means not just one who submit to the will of Allah in the sense that people think it is, so they give it limited information. So when a woman, so like on your question, when a woman gestates one of her eggs in her womb, which are all females, she mutates some of them into males so she can keep the species going, but they're all females, right? And Allah, anything in the language end with an AH is feminine. They telling people that Allah is a man when Allah is a woman, right or wrong? Wait, let me finish. They're suppressing women, which suppresses society, right? We do the ritual of Kaaba, circumambulation, which is what it's called, the ritual of circumambulation, which is counter-circular pass around the Kaaba, the cube with the meteorite cosmogony, right? And that's the 7 lords. And Muslims do that and think that that makes them Muslim, when Muslim really means muscles, tissues, and bones, the creation of woman in the womb, which means a fetus. Ain't got nothing to do with your beliefs. You understand? However, you must submit to the will of Allah because she molds you. You don't have a choice. You understand?
Another prophet who name also ends with the A or the AA.
So what does that mean?
Not sure.
Same thing.
So what that?
This is why in the Da Vinci codes they emphasize the one that's sitting next to Jesus, his wife, and then they hide it, and then they show you, when you look between them, they're really showing you a chalice, and the chalice that they drink from when they're doing all the rituals, the chalice is actually the pelvic. You understand? Yes. And so, like when you look on the questionnaire, right? Isn't it very clear that Noble writes humanity on the womb of the woman and she's unconscious, and he's holding her up? Now, so we getting destroyed because we got these unconscious women that are destroying their sons and their daughters, and he tells you in the Holy Quran, why did we fall? Because we honored not the principles of our mothers and fathers. Therefore, when we go out and we trying to get something together, and we go hook up with somebody who's not conscious, the first thing they do is destroy you. Why? Because they're living their lower self. Then you're expecting the best out, well, you ain't going to get it. Now, if we're unwilling to fix the culture, don't you be going to mate with nobody, because it's only going to end in destruction. It's up to what you want. Now, you can keep doing it if you want to, because everything, how you thinking, whatever you're creating, and that womb is the key, because it's written right there. However she thinks, state of mind, that's what you're going to produce, whether it's tangible or intangible. So when woman goes on her cycle 28 days, 2 hours, 52 minutes, and an egg comes on the left or the right of that arm, she brings forms and she brings not forms, but she brings forms. And so we're creators and makers of our own condition. Now what you believe or what you don't believe, fine, it's irrelevant. It still takes place. So as long as the sisters are unconscious and they're gratifying their lower self, or they're dealing with materialism, not recognizing that you possess things, don't let them possess you. Once they possess you, you're now in the lower gate. And if you're going to measure somebody like that, what they're going to do is destroy you and destroy themselves. Then blame the devil. No, they're gratifying their lower self. However, it doesn't mean that we don't need things. You understand? And this is where you get that fine line of the priesthood trying to make people think that material things are wrong, when they really should be teaching the misuse of material things are wrong. And that you use them, but you don't take what you do not need. Soon as you do, you start getting sick, and you create sickness. Which means everything must be atoned for. So if you take something, everything that you take out of nature, you must take it to be used. This is why a lot of times, sometimes, even though it's inconvenient, if you see bugs or something in your house and they're uncomfortable, if you have the opportunity, you open the door and try to shoo them out, or you put a piece of paper, take them out, and the only way you take their life is you forced it. You understand that they don't injure your child with disease or something like that. But basically like that, you don't do anything, because everything you do, you must pay for. Even if you step on a worm, it rattles everything else, because everything's connected to everything else. So you know the rules. So you don't need no daggone preacher or imam or rabbi to tell you that. If you really know the rules, you will discipline yourself. Because it's called cause and effect. And therefore, you must understand the duality in nature, etc. That's why they have the 7 hermetic principles that at the base of all the moral principles of all religions. Now, all these imams got it, all these rabbis got it, but what they won't teach it. So the people don't know that only do those counter notations represent the 7 laws, they also represent the 7 hermetic principles, and also represent the 7 ruling planets from which the days are named. And also, you must know their path, their elliptical path, the path of the sun, etc. in its ecliptic around the equator, etc. its effect on the earth, and how it energizes, pushes and pulls, and deals with the clay that you mold in your womb. Therefore, you have a responsibility to know the workings of the womb, which is the applied science of the number 9. So you stop bringing us here with our cross nature, or stuff all messed up in our head because we're in conflict with each other, and then because of rulership, because of greed, because of materialism, because of gold digging, they keep on bringing us here with problems and asking what's wrong with them, and they keep producing this stuff and then trying to play innocent. And this is where the woman is shown as unconscious. You understand? And we've suffered what we have created. Then we don't want to take responsibility and act like we're victims. And this is why Drawley said, when you get back into power, treat that European nice. Why do people say that? Because we, in this consciousness, when we get it, start coming as a victim. When we created this situation, we must take responsibility. And that's when you see the Circle 7 is closed out. When it closed out, the Circle 7 even tells you what was wrong. Tells you what you did wrong. Why you lost your nationality. He keeps it very simple. Then as soon as you go into the history, you'll find out what Grand Sheik Nature said. What? The slave comes from Slovakia. It's not a name, it's a nationality. And it's really only the European. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And the deal of this, we are bound free men. We lost our nationality because we honored not the principles of our mothers and fathers. This is even why when the European do movies like National Treasure, he'll go to what? Pennsylvania House, which is Independence Hall, right? From which they gather together during their mummers parade, and they gather together at 6 and Moor Street. And then you have Nicolas Cage, the actor, in that National Treasure. They're running all around Philadelphia and Chicago and other places, right? And this woman, this European sister, is trying to complete her coin collection, right? Silver coin, blue, blah, blah. Then she finds the watermark of the Great Seal in the corner of the parchment of the papers that nobody ever noticed. Oh, the Great Seal. Then they start doing some research and find some things behind the original paper of the Declaration of Independence. Of course, nature, God, nature, God. You gotta understand codes. You understand what I'm saying? Now they run it all over the place, and then they run at Pennsylvania House, which is Independence Hall, and Nicolas Cage takes 4 fingers like this and pulls out a brick, which means my son, and the study of masonry. Then he pulls out these glasses that has these flip blue tint, the ethereal plane, i.e. the blue canton, and the amity flag, which is the Stars and Stripes. That's not the national flag, that's the Amity and Commerce flag. It's not even a flag, it's a trading banner. ETC, right? And they're running all over the place, but the theme of the thing, when it all boils down, the treasures of Egypt is beneath their feet in the chambers that most people don't even know exist under the city of Philadelphia. You're standing on Egypt. They're even talking to you. You see the whole movie? And yet it's just a movie. They're talking. Yet it's the national treasure, and as the symbol, they'll have what? Your Great Seal Pyramid, which is the insignia of the Moorish nation, and the Great Seal of the United States. And we said, it's a sign of the devil. You understand what I'm saying? It's abandoning our birthright because they told us so. Meanwhile, we're playing all these games, and then different leaders got this information, and people like Malcolm, who they couldn't buy off once he found out what all these other ministers knew, they murdered him in collusion with that European that they was calling the devil. Do you understand? While they themselves had nationality cards in secret. Are we clear? Now, so we got, now, the deal with this is at what point are we going to start being honorable to this noble cause and stop being called parrots? But the deal of this, in order to get these people to come back into honor, those who know have to tell those who don't know so that they can cleanse themselves, because it becomes a washing. The knowledge or the osis of the gnosis becomes like unto water. And so they must wash and be reborn with a new mind. And so those who have the light are charged to give the light. And if they fail to give the light, they're enemies to the cause. Thus the Moorish Divine International Movement. Thus, let's go back to when the Proprio was brought into government, and why they would call him the first president, when in fact he was the 9th president. And that's not accidental strategically. So let's go to the letter from George Washington to the Sultan of Morocco to bind this all together for those people, whether Moors in the temples or Moors in the community or other nation states that try to pretend they don't know that they're standing on Morocco or that the United States is an appendage of the Moroccan Empire. Let's go to George Washington's letter, one of many, which will demonstrate that and will also show you why some of them grand governors and grand chiefs and some of them Europeans will not put this in the history books, and why some of them grand governors who claim to love Noble Ali will not have any schools and will not dispense this information in the papers that the prophet told them to do, and why they won't read the prophet's letter that the prophet commanded to be read before every meeting, and it's documented that they don't do that. So let's go to the records on the documents of American, the documents of American jurisprudence, etc., American history, etc. This is a letter from George Washington to the Sultan of Morocco, and it's dated December the 1st, 1789. It's a letter from George Washington to Muhammad ibn Abdullah, Sultan of Morocco. And then when you look at that, now you understand some of the lessons in your questionnaire. Was it, was it a leader or the ruler of Morocco, bro? Sultan? So it's giving you keys to the navigation, etc., the structure of Moorish government. Now, of course, you're going to go further and find out about the imperial divan, but you'll do that when you study. Then you recognize the structure of secret societies that's structured absolutely after Moorish imperial divan. Then you'll understand Dolly Madison and the DAR, or the Daughters of the American Revolution, which were descendants of European women who were in Moorish harems, who are Daughters of the American Revolution, and why Dolly Madison has a turban and is in Washington, D.C., and the whole building is made of marble, the only one, including the steps. You understand? And the Daughters of the American Revolution produced a manual that is used for the measurement of citizenry all around the world, and particularly in North America. And you must take a test on that Constitution, and you must pass it before you even can be naturalized. So logically, those who are nationalized, who are the superior nationals, the first level of citizenship, are required to face up to that Constitution. And why aren't these people taught those things necessary to make them better citizens when this very movement is established for that very purpose, etc.? So let's go to George Washington's letter. Letter from George Washington to Muhammad ibn Abdullah, Sultan of Morocco, city of New York, December the 1st, 1789. Take in consideration that he was appointed to the palace April the 30th of that same year. So you can see he was in the seat only a matter of months when this letter was produced. Great and magnanimous friend, since the date of the letter which the late Congress, so that means government already exists, didn't it? So he's talking about a late Congress, but they're teaching in the school that he was the first president, and he's talking about the Congress that already exists. So, since the date of the letter which the late Congress, by their president, addressed to your Imperial Majesty, the United States of America, have thought proper to change their government and institute a new one agreeable to the Constitution, of which I have the honor herewith to enclose a copy. The time necessarily employed in the arduous task and the disarrangements occasioned by so great, though peaceable, a revolution. So now you got to look at the American Revolution from a different point of view, don't you? Will apologize on account for your Majesty's not having received those regularly advised marks of attention from the United States. That means there was communications with the United States before he was even put in office. For me, which the friendship and magnanimity of your conduct toward them afforded reason to expect. They already had obligations to the Moroccan Empire before his installation. The United States having unanimously appointed me, so you can see he was appointed, not elected, appointing me to supreme executive authority in this nation, your Majesty's letter of August 17, 1788. So that means one of the letters from the Sultan that preceded this period of time by 2 years, which by reason of the dissolution of the late government remained unanswered and has been delivered to me. And I have received the letters which your Imperial Majesty has been so kind as to write in favor of the United States to the Bashars of Tunis and Tripoli, and I present to you the sincere acknowledgments and thanks of the United States for this important mark of your friendship for them. We greatly regret the hostile disposition of those regencies toward this nation who have never injured them, is not to be removed on terms of our power to comply with. As you can see, they couldn't keep up with the taxes. Within our territories, there are no mines whether of gold or silver, and this young nation, just recovering from the waste and dissolution of a long war, have not as yet had time to acquire riches by agriculture and commerce. But our soil is bountiful and our people industrious, and we have reason to flatter ourselves that we shall gradually become useful to our friends. The encouragement with which your Majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce with your dominions. So what dominions are they on? Moorish dominions. The punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, so you can see before the adoption of the Constitution, they were already bound by this treaty, as you see. And the Sultan made sure it's observed to protect them because there's others that didn't agree with them being established on the Moroccan Empire. Are you clear? Because there's regencies that didn't want this to take place, but the Sultan protected them. Do you understand? And the just and generous measures taken in the case of Captain Proctor make a deep impression on the United States, and listen to this line, and confirm their respect for and attachment to your Imperial Majesty. So you can see the United States is an appendage of the Moroccan Empire. Are we clear? Now, it gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity of assuring your Majesty that while I remain at the head of this nation, I shall not cease to promote every measure that may conduce to the friendship and harmony which so happily subsists between your empire and them. And so you can see he's acknowledging their attachment to the dominions and their attachment to the Moroccan Empire, not some Moorish Indian nation or tribe on the left or the right, to the Moorish Empire. Are you clear? And esteem shall see myself happy in every occasion of convincing your Majesty of the high sense which in common with the whole nation, I entertain the magnanimity and wisdom and benevolence of your Imperial Majesty. Are we clear? And of course, it's signed off with George Washington, so you can see by this letter, anybody who doesn't know real history would now recognize that not only do they know who the Moors are, that the United States is an appendage of the Moorish Empire, and that they couldn't keep up with the taxes. Now do you understand part of the reason for the revolution? Do you understand? So you got to know your real history. Other than that, you'd be mentally disconnected, thinking it don't even apply to you. Now you understand where the judges say, when people be talking that common law stuff, and he said you can't use the Constitution for your defense because you weren't a party to it. Well, guess what? As Moorish Americans, you're a party to it. You superseded. But if you didn't know that, you couldn't claim any law for your protections. You see, therefore, no matter what you do, if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality because you have no protections whatsoever. See why they don't want this information out? See why them grand chiefs shut down the Prophet's newspaper? See why they won't read that letter that Joe Ali wrote when they try to set him up, trying to take over this movement, and he wrote a letter from jail to be proclaimed before every meeting, and they won't read them in them temples because it will condemn them. Do you understand? Therefore it is yes. And that's the one we put in the paper now. I'm a Rockin' Star, the 201, and them grand chiefs start condemning us for doing it because they weren't doing it. But I got that letter from Assistant Grand Chief Elijah in the temple, and I also talked to Hamid Eel in Newark, New Jersey, and he gave me a lot of information and gave me the regulations for the Moorish Holy Temple of Science and the Moorish Science Temple together in one book. Do you see that being distributed in the temple? No, because they want the people to think that the Moorish Holy Temple of Science never existed. And traitors. And then he gave me the Constitution off the wall, and I got it on my wall in my apartment right now, the Moorish Holy Temple of Science. And it says part and parcel, which is a legal term which means a part of land. And them traitors turned it into partial, which means attitude. Altering the Prophet's Constitution and lying and getting angry because we published it and showed it to the people. I went to the microfilm filming scene, and they lying their butts off. And he was the last of the grand chiefs to walk with Prophet Noble Ali. His name is Hamid Eel. And he maintained the integrity of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science in Newark, New Jersey, where they ran the Prophet Hour. On Port Street. I talked to him in person. He gave me the Quran and he gave me the Constitution off the wall. And I got it now. And that's when I founded the Round Table, because I recognized this work wasn't going to be done with these traitors at the head. So I kept going to the temple, but I founded the Round Table was work I was already doing, because I knew that I'd never get it done under their jurisdiction, because I knew they were COINTELPRO operatives. However, I didn't have the power, I didn't have the finances, and I knew most of these Moors' brains were exploded. And as soon as you tell the truth, they will turn on you. So I took the information and started sharing it with the public, where it belonged in the first place. And that's why we do what we do. And that's why the Europeans condemning us now, because we took the vanguard position. You understand? And so those who are enemies to the Prophet will try to act like we're enemies to the Prophet when we're actually enforcing the law. You get the point? So knowledge is what's going to free the people, and people will take positions when they're emotional. But if you can remove them from the emotions and show them the doctrines, they will see for themselves the work they have to do. And why the Prophet put caveat into it. And did the additional bylaws to counter those insurgents in the movement, not the ones out of the movement, the ones who were in the movement, who were trying to take over the movement and claim it was just a joke. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? As a matter of fact, let me read that just to demonstrate to the Moors why them grand Shiki guys are upset with us and why they don't like us and why they pissed off at me when I published it years ago.
Islam,
and now I'm Rockin' Star.
Islam, we got about 5 minutes left, Moors.
Islam.
Are there any questions that we need to address?
Anybody got any questions?
Any last questions?
Yeah. What's going on, man? Just hearing what you're saying, I was wondering how we can prevent this NBC bullshit seeping into our movement, which it looks like it already has.
I can't hear you.
Make something clear.
I was saying, just go over what you were just saying. How can we prevent this NBC bullshit from seeping into our movement? Because it looks like it already has.
True.
What do you mean? What do you mean NBC movement?
The Negro, Black, and Color stuff.
Yeah.
Yo, hold on. Islam Moors, it's
Give
Kizzy
me an
Roots,
example of an
place.
issue.
Hey, blessing. Divine. Thank you for your time. I'm just peacing out in the place. I'm really glad to have heard you guys today. Islam.
Islam.
Enjoy.
Islam.
Now, we only got a little bit of time, but I want to read a letter from Noble Ali himself that the Prophet himself declared must be read before every meeting. And I suggest when you travel the country, you will not hear this spoken by those grand sheiks. And when they're not willing to speak what the Prophet said for them to speak, that tells you whether or not they're COINTELPRO operatives. Here's from the Prophet Noble Ali. Moor Science Temple of America, Home Office, 3603 Indiana Avenue. Noble Ali, the founder. Chicago, Illinois. January the 18th, 1929. This was a few months before they assassinated him. This was when they tried to set him up for Green's murder when they was trying to take over the temple. And they put him in jail and interrogated him, made him sleep on blocks of ice so they could create pneumonia. Now, to be proclaimed in every meeting, I am glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. And there's a host of jealousy about me in the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claimed it was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens. And they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so that they themselves may take charge of the situation. And I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is to the faithful Moors that contribute to the movement and the uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I'm calling on all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance and I need it bad. Never have I needed finance as badly as I do at present, that I may shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without me, the prophet, being the head. It has been proven by me, by my work in which I have performed in the last few months, because I was at the governor's inauguration to represent the Moorish divine and national movement. And I will be at the inauguration of President Hoover for the same cause. So you're recognized by your attachment to the Moorish divine and national movement, not just to the temple. And you're supposed to take your place on the political arena and speak up for the nation. This is why Act 1 says they're put in power to make law. And they've been telling the people no Drali didn't teach law or civics. Therefore, they're traitors. And they have not been unseated, and you're paying that price today. Why we must fight to you right now. Are we clear?
Islam.
And I trust that we've done some good and that we can all get more conscious, because that consciousness creates the necessary unity. Because you remove the falsehood by placing the truth before the people so that they can measure everybody accordingly. Are we clear?
Islam.
We're going to say Islam, Moors.
Islam, Moors.
Love you all.
Love you too, Taj. Nature, brother, nature, we love you.
Islam.
Enough respect.
Great class.
Peace and love.
Thank
Much
you.
love.
Thank you.
All right, Moors.
Islam, Moor, y'all want to lead us in prayer?
Yeah, we close out for sure.
All right. Islam.
Islam.
5 on the left, 2 on the right.
5 on the left, 2 on the right.
Allah, the Father of the universe.
Allah, the Father of
Allah,
the universe.
Father of love.
Father of love.
Truth.
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 Peace.
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 Freedom.
Freedom.
And justice.
And
And
justice.
justice.
Allah is my protector.
Allah is my
Allah is my
protector,
My guide.
my guide,
And my salvation.
And my salvation.
And my salvation.
By night
by night
By night.
and by day.
And
by
by
day,
day.
My day.
Through the divine prophet,
the divine prophet,
Noble Drew Ali.
Noble
Noble
Drew Ali,
Ali.
Islam.
Islam,
Islam.
Ashe,
Islam.
Peace.
Islam.
peace.
Peace, family.
Alright, peace.
That was a great class. Yes. It's long. Boy,
It's long.
Taj started to heat up after
You don't have
that.
to
I did. Starting to get cheese right now.
At the end,
There's no more joking around.
at the end was, you know.
Oh man.
So yeah, fam, that's what we do.
Well, welcome to the Moorish Science Temple of America. People who
Yeah. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, welcome home, welcome home.
Welcome home. Welcome home, sister, man.